go live to the Treasurer speaking in Brisbane on the inflation number today. Then we'll come back to Eamon and David Guzzard in a moment and get their thoughts.
So these are heartening numbers, encouraging numbers, they're welcome numbers, but we're not getting carried away because we know that the monthly numbers can be volatile. We know that inflation doesn't always moderate in a straight line, and we know that people are still under pressure. And that's why our cost of living help is so important, and it's also why our responsible economic management is so important. Katie's going to say a few things about that.
Thanks very much, Jim, and it's lovely to be here in your home city today.
You're always welcome here.
It's nice. It's glorious to be here. But thanks, Jim. So what we've seen is our responsible economic management is helping in the fight against inflation, and seen in those numbers today. And that budget management, particularly about returning revenue to the budget, finding savings in the budget and reprioritising spending, has helped us with our budget improvements that we're seeing. And on Monday, we'll be releasing the final budget outcome. That'll show our second surplus, and it'll be an improvement on the number that we released during the budget. And that improvement in the budget outcome is not related to increased revenue, but is related to less spending on the spending side of the budget. And we know from the comments that the RBA Governor has made in the past that surplus budgeting is helping in the fight against inflation, that is a big help, and you'll see that reflected in the budget outcome, the FBO that we do on Monday. But that's really our approach to budgeting, Jim and mine: to find savings, return revenue, deliver budget surpluses when the inflation challenge has been what it has, and that's helping overall in that fight against inflation.
I'll just say a few things about previewing meetings in China, and then we're happy to take some questions. So the key influences on our economy right now are the inflation that we've been talking about today, combined with global economic uncertainty and the impact of the rate rises which are already in the system. Those three things are combining to slow our economy substantially. And particularly when it comes to the Chinese economy, we've seen a weakness in the Chinese economy, which obviously has consequences for us. We're not immune from weakness in the Chinese economy. And that's why it's so important that over the next 2 days, I'll be meeting with key Chinese counterparts in Beijing. This is another really important step towards stabilising our economic relationship with China. This will be the first visit to China by an Australian Treasurer in 7 years. It will be part of the Albanese government's methodical and coordinated efforts to re-establish dialogue with China, Australia's largest trading partner. Now, the main purpose is to co-chair the Australia-China Strategic Economic Dialogue with the Chairman of the National Development and Reform Commission. That will happen tomorrow. Our relationship with China is full of complexity and it's full of opportunity. We recognise that a more stable economic relationship between Australia and China is a good thing for Australian workers and businesses, investors and our country more broadly. That's why just in the last week, in the context of these meetings in China, I've consulted directly with the chairs, CEOs and senior executives of major China-facing Australian employers, including Rio Tinto, Wesfarmers, BHP, Woodside, Fortescue, Macquarie, BlueScope, HSBC, King & Wood Mallesons, the Port of Newcastle, Sydney Airport, Cochlear, the University of New South Wales, GrainCorp, and I've also been consulting with the Business Council of Australia. We believe that dialogue and engagement gives us the best chance to properly manage and maximise these really important links. And our approach to China has been to cooperate where we can, disagree where we must, but also always engage in Australia's national interest. The Strategic Economic Dialogue hasn't been convened since 2017, but our government has agreed with Chinese counterparts to restart it, and I'll be meeting with other counterparts from the Chinese government during my 2 days of engagements as well. We recognise that there's a lot at stake and a lot to gain from a more stable economic relationship with China. We've got a big opportunity to make sure that both countries benefit from the complementarity of our economies while always advancing and protecting Australia's national interests. And with that, I'm happy to take some questions.
Will the Treasury be looking at negative gearing and capital gains tax?
Well, first of all, the real story today is inflation. The story today is about a substantial moderation in headline and underlying inflation in our economy. We've got a housing policy and that's not in it. And we've made that clear today.
Did you direct Treasury to look into negative gearing policy changes, perhaps affecting the election?
Well, Treasury looks at all kinds of policy options all of the time. It's not unusual for the public service, and in my case, my department, I'm sure Katie's department is the same, to examine issues that are being speculated about in the public or in the parliament. That's how a good public service operates.
Do you principally agree with the argument that reading in negative gearing will have a negative impact on rental supply?
Well, I'm not going to engage in hypothetical impacts of hypothetical policies when we've already got a housing policy. Now, we've got a housing policy which is about building more homes for Australians. It's about making it easier to rent and to buy. We know from today's inflation figures that we've taken some of the sting out of rents, but rents are still too high, and that's because we don't have enough homes. And so our motivation throughout this has been to build more homes for Australians. That's what our $32 billion of investment, including $6 billion in the last budget, is all about. And if our political opponents cared about housing, they would vote for our policies in the Senate. Instead, in their usually characteristically destructive way, both the Greens and the Coalition are teaming up to prevent more homes being built. Building more homes is the best way to ensure that people can find a home to rent or buy.
On stage